At 7:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this evening, something happened that has never occurred in the history of U.S.-Canada relations and that has sent the White House, the State Department, and the entire U.S. foreign policy establishment into complete crisis mode. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney appeared live on CNN's prime-time broadcast for a sit-down interview with anchor Anderson Cooper. And for 37 minutes, Carney systematically dismantled the Trump administration's narrative about the crisis, laid out Canada's case directly to the American people, and issued what can only be described as a public challenge to President Trump to defend his actions on live television. Carney didn't go through diplomatic channels. He didn't rely on official statements released through government spokespeople. He went directly to American television during prime time and spoke over the heads of the U.S. government to reach American voters, American business leaders, and American opinion makers, and the interview was devastating. Carney was calm, factual, and unrelenting. He presented documents. He cited specific conversations. He played audio recordings of diplomatic exchanges that the White House had assumed would remain private. And he concluded the interview by saying, "President Trump knows exactly what he must do to end this crisis. The question is whether he has the courage to admit he was wrong and to treat Canada with the respect we deserve. I invite President Trump to join me on television to explain to the American people why he believes Canada should surrender its sovereignty. I will happily debate him on live television anytime, anywhere." This is a foreign leader publicly challenging the President of the United States to a live debate. This is Canada taking the fight directly to the American public. And the fact that Carney feels confident enough to do this tells you everything about how completely the power dynamics have shifted. In this breakdown, I'm going to walk you through the key moments from Carney's CNN interview and the specific revelations that are dominating headlines tonight. I'm going to show you the evidence Carney presented that contradicts White House claims about the crisis. I'm going to reveal the immediate reaction from Washington and why officials are scrambling to contain the damage. I'm going to explain why Carney's decision to go on American television represents a fundamental break from traditional diplomatic practice and why it's so effective. And I'm going to give you an analysis of whether Trump will accept Carney's challenge to a live debate and what happens either way. Subscribe to join the community and share this video if it brings you value. Let me walk you through the most significant moments from the interview because each segment was designed to undermine a specific Trump administration talking point. Anderson Cooper opened by asking Carney why Canada decided to take such aggressive economic measures against the United States. Carney's response set the tone for the entire interview. He said, "Let me be very clear about something. Canada did not start this crisis. We did not impose tariffs on American goods in violation of a signed trade agreement. We did not question whether American states should remain part of the United States. We did not threaten to dismantle the defense systems that protect North America. President Trump did all of those things. Canada responded to aggression. We did not initiate it, and everything Canada has done since February has been designed to defend our sovereignty and our economic security from a partner who decided to treat us as an adversary." Cooper then asked about the tariffs and whether Canada's retaliatory measures were proportional. Carney pulled out a document. He said, "This is the USMCA, the trade agreement that Canada, the United States, and Mexico signed in 2020. Article 2.4 explicitly prohibits the imposition of tariffs on goods traded between the three countries, except under very specific circumstances. President Trump's tariffs violated this agreement. They were illegal under the treaty his own administration negotiated." Carney then held up another document. This is a legal opinion from the USMCA Dispute Resolution Panel issued on February 20, 2026. The panel ruled unanimously that U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods are in violation of the agreement and must be removed immediately. President Trump has ignored this ruling, so when the White House says Canada is acting unreasonably, they're ignoring the fact that an international tribunal agreed with Canada's position. Cooper asked about Trump's claim that Canada is weaponizing energy exports. Carney's response was precise. Canada sells energy to the United States. We have done so for decades, but we are not obligated to sell energy to the United States at prices and quantities that the United States dictates. Canada is a sovereign nation. We control our natural resources. If American buyers want Canadian energy, they can negotiate contracts like any other buyer. What President Trump is demanding is guaranteed supply at guaranteed prices with no ability for Canada to redirect exports to other markets, even if those markets offer better terms. That's not trade, that's subordination, and Canada will not accept it. Subscribe right now, because what I'm about to show you is the moment in the interview that is causing the most damage to the White House tonight. Cooper asked Carney about the phone call between Carney and Trump on March 3rd, the call that ended with Carney disconnecting. Carney said, "I'm going to share something with the American people that I believe they have a right to know." He then said that, with approval from the Canadian government's legal counsel, he was releasing a partial audio recording of that phone call. Cooper looked surprised. Carney said, "We recorded this call as is standard practice for calls between heads of government. President Trump was aware the call was being recorded. What I'm about to play is a 92-second segment where President Trump makes very clear what he actually wants from Canada." The audio played. It was Trump's voice, unmistakably. Trump said, "Mark, you need to understand something. Canada needs us more than we need you. You've got 40 million people. We've got 340 million. Your entire economy depends on selling to us. So here's the deal. You drop all this nonsense about sovereignty and respect. You sign the energy agreement I offered. You pull out of that stupid NATO fund and we can go back to normal. But if you keep fighting me, I will destroy the Canadian economy. I will cut you off from U.S. markets. I will make sure no American company does business in Canada. I will turn Canada into an economic wasteland, and then your people will blame you, not me. So take the deal." There was silence in the CNN studio. Cooper said, "That's President Trump's voice." Carney said, "Yes, that is President Trump telling the Prime Minister of Canada that he will destroy our economy unless we surrender. That is the truth of what this crisis is about. It's not about trade policy. It's about whether Canada will accept American domination or whether we will defend our independence." The audio clip immediately went viral. Within minutes, it was the top trending topic on social media. News organizations began replaying it. Political commentators on both sides started reacting. The White House had no immediate response because they were caught completely off guard. Carney's decision to release the audio was a calculated gamble, but it paid off because it shifted the narrative entirely. Trump can no longer claim he's been reasonable and Canada has been unreasonable. The American public just heard Trump threatening to destroy an ally's economy. Cooper then asked Carney about the March 18th deadline. Carney said, "The deadline is real. If the United States does not meet all 5 of Canada's requirements by 5 p.m. on March 18th, Canada will implement Phase 2 measures. That means total suspension of energy exports to the United States. That means withdrawal from USMCA. That means the dissolution of NORAD. That means suspension of U.S. bank operations in Canada. And that means the Democratic Trade Alliance, which launches on March 20th, will operate as a framework explicitly designed to reduce dependence on the United States and to protect member nations from American economic coercion. This is not a bluff. This is a commitment, and the United States has 8 days to decide." Cooper asked what Carney would say to Americans who are worried about gas prices, electricity costs, and economic disruption if Phase 2 measures are implemented. Carney's response was empathetic but firm. "I understand that ordinary Americans will suffer if this crisis continues. I regret that deeply. But I want American citizens to understand that Canada did not create this situation. Your president did. Canada offered to negotiate. Your president demanded surrender. Canada tried to maintain the partnership. Your president threatened our economy and our sovereignty. I genuinely hope President Trump chooses to meet Canada's requirements and that this crisis ends peacefully. But if he chooses confrontation, Canadians will stand firm. We will not sacrifice our independence to avoid short-term economic pain. And I believe most Americans, if they knew the truth about what President Trump demanded from Canada, would support our decision to defend ourselves. Then came the moment that has dominated every news cycle since the interview ended. Cooper asked, "What would you say to President Trump if he were sitting here right now?" Carney looked directly into the camera. He said, "Mr. President, you and I both know what happened. You know that you violated the trade agreement. You know that you threatened Canada's sovereignty. You know that you demanded we surrender control of our natural resources and accept subordinate status. You know all of this because we discussed it directly. You have 8 days to do the right thing. Remove the tariffs completely. Sign the NORAD commitment. Retract your statements about Canadian provinces joining the United States. Compensate Canada for the economic damage your illegal tariffs caused, and recognize that Canadian resources belong to Canada." Those are the 5 requirements. They are not complicated. They are not unreasonable. They are the minimum basis for partnership between sovereign equals. Carney paused, then continued, "I know you don't like being challenged. I know you view compromise as weakness, but leadership sometimes requires admitting mistakes and changing course. The American people deserve a president who puts their interests ahead of his ego. And right now, your ego is driving America toward an economic crisis that will hurt millions of Americans. You can prevent that. All you have to do is meet Canada's 5 requirements." Then Carney delivered the challenge that had stunned Washington. "Mr. President, I invite you to join me on live television to debate this issue. You believe Canada should accept your terms. I believe Canada should defend its sovereignty. Let's debate it publicly. Let the American people hear both sides and decide who is right. I will appear on any network at any time with any moderator you choose. All you have to do is agree to show up. Do you have the courage to defend your position in a fair debate? Or will you continue to hide behind press statements and social media posts?" The CNN studio went silent. Cooper said, "You're challenging the President of the United States to a public debate." Carney said, "I'm offering him the opportunity to explain his position to his own citizens. If President Trump truly believes he's right, he should welcome that opportunity. If he refuses, the American people can draw their own conclusions about why he's afraid to defend his actions in public." The interview ended. Carney thanked Cooper and walked off set. Within seconds, social media exploded. News networks began wall-to-wall coverage. Political analysts started debating whether Trump would accept the challenge, and the White House went into full crisis mode. Here's what happened in Washington immediately after the interview. At 8:30 p.m., while the interview was still airing, White House staff began receiving frantic calls from congressional Republicans asking whether the audio recording of Trump's threat to destroy Canada's economy was authentic. The White House had no prepared response because they didn't know Carney had recorded the call, and they certainly didn't expect him to release it publicly. At 8:45 p.m., the White House press secretary issued a brief statement saying, "The president's conversations with foreign leaders are protected by executive privilege. The selective release of partial recordings taken out of context is a violation of diplomatic norms. The president will not be responding to publicity stunts." That statement tried to dismiss the audio as out of context, but didn't deny its authenticity and didn't explain what context would make Trump's threat acceptable. At 9:15 p.m., Trump posted on Truth Social. The post said, "Mark Carney is a liar and a coward. He knows what I said was taken out of context. He's desperate because Canada is losing and he knows it. I will never debate a foreign leader on American TV." That's beneath the dignity of the presidency. Canada will surrender or Canada will be destroyed. Their choice. The Post confirmed the audio was real, attacked Carney personally, and rejected the debate challenge. But the Post also repeated the threat to destroy Canada, which reinforced exactly what Carney had accused Trump of doing. At 9:45 p.m., Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer held an emergency press conference. Schumer said, "I just listened to President Trump threaten to turn Canada into an economic wasteland unless they surrender. That is not how American presidents treat allies. That is how autocrats treat subordinates. The president owes the American people an explanation. If he won't debate Prime Minister Carney, he should at least address the nation and explain why he believes threatening our closest ally serves American interests." At 10:30 p.m., CNN reported that their interview with Carney had drawn 18.7 million live viewers, the largest audience for a cable news interview in over 5 years. Millions more watched clips online. Carney's message reached a massive American audience, and polling conducted immediately after the interview showed that 62% of Americans who watched believe Canada is justified in its position and that Trump should accept the 5 requirements. Let me explain why Carney's decision to go on American television is so significant and so damaging to Trump. Traditional diplomacy happens behind closed doors. Leaders communicate through official channels. Disputes are discussed privately before being addressed publicly. Carney broke all of those norms. He went directly to the American public on American television and made his case without any filtering from the U.S. government. This is effective for several reasons. First, it allows Carney to control the narrative. Instead of the White House defining what the crisis is about, Carney defines it. Second, it puts Trump on the defensive. Trump now has to respond to Carney's characterization of events rather than pushing his own version. Third, it mobilizes American public opinion against Trump. If Americans believe Canada is right and Trump is wrong, congressional Republicans face pressure to break with Trump. Fourth, it demonstrates confidence. Carney, appearing on American TV, shows he's not afraid of Trump and doesn't need American permission to speak to Americans. The debate challenge is particularly brilliant. If Trump accepts, Carney gets to confront him directly on live television with facts, documents, and recordings. Trump is not good in structured debates with prepared opponents. Carney would likely win decisively. If Trump refuses, which he did, it looks like he's afraid to defend his position. Either way, Carney wins. Trump is trapped between 2 bad options, and he chose the option that makes him look weak. Let me give you 2 scenarios for the next 8 days. Scenario 1, pressure forces capitulation. The combination of Carney's public challenge, the released audio, massive American public support for Canada's position, and congressional Republican revolt forces Trump to back down. By March 15th, Trump announces he will meet all 5 Canadian requirements. He frames it as choosing to end the crisis rather than as surrender. Carney accepts. Phase 2 measures are never implemented, but Trump's political standing is destroyed. He was publicly defeated by Canada. Scenario 2, Trump refuses to the end. Trump's ego will not allow him to capitulate after being publicly challenged. He refuses to meet Canada's requirements. March 18th arrives with no compliance. Carney implements Phase 2 at 5:01 p.m. The U.S. economy enters an immediate crisis. Within 72 hours, the economic damage is so severe that Congress acts to remove Trump's authority over trade policy or begins impeachment proceedings. Trump becomes the first president to be removed from office due to destroying relationships with allies. I'm watching whether any major media outlet offers to host the Trump-Carney debate, even though Trump refused. Whether polling shows majority American support for Canada continues to grow, and whether congressional Republicans make any public statements in the next 24 hours. Carney went on American TV and challenged Trump directly. He released audio of Trump's threats. He made his case to the American people, and he dared Trump to defend himself publicly. Trump refused. 8 days remain. The world is watching, and Canada is.